Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
The West is in a snow drought, mountain areas delayed opening, and limited ski runs. But nonprofit recreation area Bogus Basin has a secret weapon against the warming conditions.
I talked to the snowmakers and I was like, just start making snow up there. And we picked a spot. We called it Project X. We just made a giant pile of snow.
I'm Jamie Geary. How Bogus Basin opened with snow stored last season. Listen on BoiseStatePublicRadio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. 1 in 6 people suffer from migraines. Now, these debilitating headaches can cause throbbing pain, nausea, and can make light and sound so overwhelming that it leaves people unable to think or even function. And when a migraine hits, everyday tasks can become impossible. And even with medications, sometimes the only option is closing themselves into a dark, quiet room and just waiting for the pain to stop. Keeping a job can be challenging because these headaches can hit at any time, leading to sick days and stigma at work and even struggling to keep your career going. In fact, migraines cost U.S. companies $13 billion a year in lost productivity. Laura Miller volunteers with the Alliance for Headache Disorders Advocacy, and she's traveled to Washington, D.C. in the past to talk to congressional leaders about migraines. She lives in Meridian and works to help raise awareness about migraines, and she's joining us now to talk more. Laura, welcome to the program.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me on today.
So, Laura, can you talk to us a little bit about your experience with migraines?
Yes. So my migraine story starts, I was in the middle of college at Boise State. I started getting really sudden, intense, one-sided head pain. At first, I wasn't quite sure what it was. I also had nausea, sensitivity to light and sound, and eventually I went to the university health clinic and I was diagnosed with migraine really quickly. I feel really fortunate that I was able to get a diagnosis so quickly because many people endure years of head pain before they're able to get accurately diagnosed. At the university health clinic, I was given some samples of some different medication, like migraine medication to try. And that was the beginning of my journey. And that was 20 years ago. And since then, I've tried dozens of different treatments and therapies and just kind of had to make peace with the changes and different paths I've had to take just in everyday life due to migraine.
So, Laura, how much have your migraines interrupted your life on an everyday basis?
It's affected every aspect of my life. Kind of on a day-to-day basis, I kind of have to do, an evaluation on like how bad is my pain? What do I have to do today? What adjustments do I need to do? It affects everything from, big picture things about, my career path into everyday things about, taking my children to school, what I'm able to accomplish on my to-do list. And it's very all encompassing as far as like the impact to my life.
Can you talk a little bit about, you said how it impacted your career path? Because my understanding is you had plans to attend law school.
I did, yes. So as I mentioned, my migraine started when I was in the middle of college. I was able to continue college. I graduated my degrees in political science, and it was always my dream to go into law school. I still wanted to pursue that dream after I graduated, so I did go ahead with taking the LSATs, applying to law schools, and I did get in. But I did ultimately decide not to go, primarily due to chronic migraine. At that point, I had several days each week where I was just completely unable to function. And I really wanted to be, optimistic and hope things would get better. But I just realized that it wasn't something that was just going to go away. And so I was kind of at this point of trying to balance the practicality of, should I move out of state, take out more student loans and enter like this really rigorous course of study when I had to also face the reality of like where I was health wise and what, kind of balance what I was able to do with what I wanted to do.
Mm. Not only does it impact people's careers, but gosh, there is such a perception around folks who suffer from migraines. Have you experienced this at all and how people perceive you?
Yes, and it's highly stigmatized and really misunderstood. And it's such a, it's obviously an invisible illness. So that's, I think that's really difficult for people to be able to have that, to be able to empathize with the pain. But also, it's a spectrum disorder. So everyone's experience is different. So if you know one person with
Mm.
migraine, you know just that one person that lives with migraine. You don't know everybody's experience. So it's so individualistic and it's so difficult to understand. And I think a lot of people are well-meaning and maybe don't, try to have that stigma. And it's, I think there's just a lot more education that could go into it and understanding.
Eh, Do we have any idea how many people suffer in Idaho from migraines?
Yeah, so the national statistic is about 40 million people in America live with migraine or any other headache disorder. So statistically, that equates to about approximately 290,000 Idahoans is the estimate.
Wow. So my understanding is that you're one of the winners of the 2025 Migraine Career Catalyst Award. Can you talk to us about that award?
Yes, so that is a award that is sponsored by a pharmaceutical company, AbbVie. And I'd come across the award and I kind of read through what the requirements were. And at first I was, kind of wondering if there was a place for me in this, in this contest because I've been a stay-at-home mom for so long. But I just decided to go for it. I wrote an essay, just kind of wrote from the heart about my experience living with chronic migraine and how it altered my career path and what my aspirations were for the future. And I was surprised that I'd won. I was very excited when I
Mm.
found out that I won. I kind of always had this dream of wanting to, kind of create something that would be sustainable and work with, uh, the way that I have to live with my migraines. And so, finding out that I'd won was a really great experience.
So you got $2,500 as part of the award. So what is your plan? With what
I
are you planning on doing with that?
Yes, yes, I did, and that was great. So I, as I mentioned, kind of had this plan. I wanted to start a business, so I am kind of in the planning phase, the starting phase of that, and I want to start a business doing legislative and advocacy communications consulting. And so I'm planning to kind of use the money. I've already met with an advisor with the Small Business Development Center to kind of work on a plan. But I'd like to use the funds to do like some training courses, purchase some software, create a website, and maybe use some of those funds to attend like networking events that I may not have attended otherwise.
Hmm. So, as I mentioned in my introduction of you, you've spent some time in Washington, D.C., even talking to our delegates about migraine. Talk us talk to us about what that's been like.
Yeah, yeah, that was a really cool opportunity. So that was with an organization called Alliance for Headache Disorders Advocacy, and they do an event called Headache on the Hill. And I had come across it. I, been in this era where I would had, graduated from college and decided not to go to law school, and kind of not in the greatest place mental health wise. But I came across this Headache on the Hill and read about it, and I was like, this is it. Like it's the politics and the law and all of that, combined with migraine advocacy. So I decided to go and went in spring of 2024 and traveled to Washington, D.C., along with close to 300 other advocates from across the country. And we all convened in Washington, D.C., and the organization set up meetings for each of us to, we had, state teams and we had other teams that we were teamed up with and met with congressional offices. And we got to discuss, pieces of legislation. We got to tell our stories, how these pieces of legislation would impact us and our stories and, the migrant community as a whole. And it was a really, really incredible experience.
Mhm. And what was the reaction to your stories on Capitol Hill?
It was, I think what made an impact. I think that having that human connection and seeing the faces and the stories behind the disease, because they might see the statistics, they might see legislation come across their desk, but actually having that connection and having that human piece of knowing like constituents that are affected by this in their everyday life and in so many aspects. I think that was really impactful.
So you've already worked on raising awareness in Meridian and Boise. What's next for you? You said you want to start this new business, but what about
Yes.
making sure that there is more advocacy around what? And I think as you so put so well is that this is an invisible ailment.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm definitely, like I said, continuing with those plans with building this business, but advocacy is always going to be a piece. Like now that I guess I said, now that I've had a taste of it, I'm always doing more. So like Headache on the Hill is definitely the beginning of kind of me really digging in and getting really involved in advocacy in a lot of different ways. That's through like, proclamations through the state and through the cities. Speaking at city council, and there's also some other different awareness things. So June is Migraine and Headache Awareness Month, and there's some other events that I was interested in setting up. Just kind of getting the word out there and letting people know, just like displaying the statistics and being able to speak to people so that they're aware of what this disease is, how it impacts people's lives, so that there can be a little more compassion, more awareness. Just in interaction with everybody, and then also career wise too, having that better understanding, I think is better for everybody.
Mhm. Well, Laura, I want to thank you so much for taking time to share your story with us today. We've been talking with Laura Miller. She volunteers with the Alliance for Headache Disorders Advocacy, and she's one of the winners of the 2025 Migraine Career Catalyst Award. We will, of course, put more information on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. I'm Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters.
Hey, I'm Peter Pruitt from Zoo, Idaho.
And I'm Dr. Leif Tapinola with the Idaho Museum of Natural History.
Together we host The Nature of Idaho, a podcast all about how our state's amazing landscapes, wildlife, and geology shape life here in the Gem State.
Each week we dive into nature stories from across Idaho, everything from fossils to forests, and sometimes even a few fun facts you can share on your next hike.
So join us as we celebrate everything that makes wild Idaho special.
Listen to The Nature of Idaho from KISU, wherever you get your podcasts, or at KISU.org.